Giving this second lecture in the series. Please join me in welcoming her to the lecture today.
I was about to say good morning, and then I realized it's good afternoon. So I hope everyone is having a great Monday. I hope no one's having any Monday shenanigans. So I am Nicole Sciortino. I am the chemistry professor at Barton. I teach Organic 1 and 2, biochemistry, and physical chemistry. My least favorite class is P-Chem. It's a lot of math. And you have to go back in your brain and remember all those math classes you took. So my lecture today is understanding the pressures of women in the STEM fields. And I really wanted to make something that can relate to my life and hopefully give you guys an understanding, because there is more women going into the STEM fields than there was in the past. So I wrote a lovely thing here so that I don't go off topic and I can make it short and brief and simple. Okay, so the pressures that are put on women in a male-dominated field like STEM can cause imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a person who has experienced a sense of inadequacy, self-doubt, their abilities have been overestimated in their workplace or field of study. These feelings can lead to stress, which can alter the production of oligodendrocytes in the brain. When this production is altered, it can lead to stress-related disorders, like anxiety and depression, to name a couple. Let's investigate anxiety for just a second. So anxiety, as many of you know, is an adaptive function of the brain that helps to protect a person from danger. Example, the more the person worries, the less likely they are to do dangerous actions. This feeling is good to have for protecting oneself from things that can harm us. But this feeling shouldn't be present in everyday life, especially in our careers or field of study. It is a known fact that women in STEM fields are more than likely to suffer from depression than men. Here are a few statistics to put things into perspective. So life, physical, and social sciences, 7.2% of women experience depression versus only 2.3% of men. In engineering and architecture, 11.1% of women experience depression versus only 3.3% of men. Mathematics and computer sciences, 10.4% of women experience depression versus only 4.6% of men. Women in STEM also get paid a little less, even though they do the same amount of work or more. So women get paid about $15,000 less than men. And this is based on a yearly average statistics that I found online. 50% of women in STEM jobs face gender discrimination comparing to non-STEM occupations for women. So I found a timeline that just did it really pretty, showing how more women go into chemistry from 1960 to 2021. So from 1960, there was only 8% of women in the chemistry field. 1970, it grew to 12%. In 1980, it did a jump to 20%. 1990, it increased again to 27%. And in 2000, it was a major increase of 32%. However, in 2010, it dropped down to 26%, and then it plateaued at 2021 at 26%. So when I was choosing a chemistry field, it was a scary moment in my college career. When I showed interest, I was told, oh, that major is too hard, or you should choose an easier field, or you must be super smart. These comments altered the way I felt about my choice in major. I proceeded on with this major and went into grad school for inorganic and organic chemistry. This is where I felt the pressures of being a woman in STEM heightened. Knowing that I had to compete with all these men in the same grad program felt a bit overwhelming at times. I did not let this fear stop me from pursuing this master's degree. With being overwhelmed led to stressing over my grades, getting my thesis project completed, presenting the work, etc. This might seem normal to you guys. When you're in STEM, these feelings escalate because you want to make sure that you're on top like your peers. And when your peers are mostly men, it does bring anxiety that maybe you are not smart enough to be in this major. I have been talked over, not been taken serious due to being a woman. this creative fuel to continue and to strive to be the best. Every stepping stone you take will guide you to your future. I remember an interview for an internship. This interview was going really well, and the topic of my 1-year-old came up, and I really don't know how it came up, but it did. I clearly remember the look of disappointment washed over the interviewer's face. And her exact comment was, "You must be tired all the time," or "with the long nights." And after this, I felt this interview came to a halt and shortly ended, and I did not get that internship. This one example of many that I have faced, like so many women in the STEM field. I wanted to end this talk with a few women who have made history in this world based on their STEM career. So I chose 3, and these 3, when I chose them, it really brought a perspective of how women really have progressed science into the world that we live in now. So Lillian Moeller Gilbert was an American psychologist, an industrial engineer at the turn of the 20th century. She was an expert in efficiency and organizational psychology, the principles of which she applied not only as a management consultant for major corporations, but also to her household of 12 children. If you heard the book Cheaper by the Dozen, it was kind of written by her, like about her life. Her long list of firsts includes first female commencement speaker at the University of California, first female engineering professor at Purdue, and first woman elected to the National Academy of Engineering. Ruth Rogan Benito was an American chemist and pioneer in bioproducts. Ruth's career was saving the cotton industry in post-World War II America through her discovery of a process to produce wrinkle-free, stain-free, and flame-resistant cotton fabrics. In addition to this work, Ruth also developed a method to harvest fats from seeds for use in intravenous feeding of medical patients. The system became the foundation for the system we use today. After retiring from the USDA and teaching university courses for an additional 11 years, Ruth received the MIT Lifetime Achievement Award, both for her contributions to the textile industry and her commitment to education. These are 2 different women and 2 different sides of the STEM field, and they did amazing things to make what we know today. The last woman I want to talk about, and has no relation to Dr. Pennington, just has a last name, is Mary Engel Pennington, was an American chemist at the turn of the 20th century. At a time when few women attended college, Pennington completed her PhD and went on to work as a bacteriological chemist in the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Shortly after arriving at the USDA, Pennington became chief of the newly established Food Research Laboratory. During her 40-year career at the USDA, Pennington's pioneering research on sanitary methods of processing, storing, and shipping food led to achievements such as the first standards for milk safety, as well as universally accepted standards for the refrigeration of food products. Think about these 3 women and think about what they had to go through in those times to get to where they were, to get to what they achieved. Do you think it was an easy road for them? Absolutely not. They went through a lot of discrimination. They went through a lot of back talk and so forth, and they pursued and made great achievements in their life and in their careers. So no matter what you choose to major in or what occupation you decide to go into, don't let unwanted opinions stop you from being the best you can be. That's it.
So questions from the audience? Yes.
So I'm a bio major myself, and I've noticed that there's a lot of women in the biology classes, and it seems to be more than men, and that's just not how I thought it would be, like, before going to college. I didn't think that I would be surrounded by women in my chosen field, but I am. How does that feel to know that you're teaching at a college that actually has a bunch of women in STEM?
It feels awesome, actually. Going from the universities that I've been at and seeing, as I was one of few women in the field to study, and then coming here and seeing so many women wanting to go into the STEM fields, we are excelling in the years to come. There's great futures for women, and I don't want you guys to have fear to hold you back. You guys can do amazing things, and even men can do amazing things. And it's just amazing to know that Barton really guides women into the STEM field.
In front of your lecture, you said that more worries leads to less dangerous actions, right?
Yes.
Do you think that this also leads to less mistakes being made in one's career?
So when you make mistakes, you have to actually do too. And mistakes in the STEM field are actually, they want you to make mistakes because that's when things actually start happening and coming together. So when you don't make the mistakes or you don't do it to even make a possible mistake, I feel like it holds you back. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's an interesting dichotomy there when you think about like at a job, your expectation is that the performance is that you perform very high, but then performing high means that you might create mistakes intentionally looking for the right solutions, but then that can be perceived negatively. And there's a real interesting catch-22 with
Right.
that.
It is. I remember the PI I worked before coming here, she told me, I like mistakes because mistakes make you realize, you make new things, make new discoveries. And new discoveries mean more money for them. So I really, in the STEM field, they really do like you making mistakes. Not costly mistakes, but some.
Thoughts and questions? Nathan?
What was the name of this syndrome? You said that decline of oligodendrocytes. What was that syndrome?
Imposter syndrome?
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, I didn't catch the last name of Ruth.
Oh, I'll spell it out for you. It's BENERITO.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Can you share a little bit about when it was that you realized you had this love for science?
I was taking a general chemistry class, and I did really well on an exam. And my general chemistry professor, his name was Dr. Mogus, pulled me aside and he goes, "You should look into being a chemistry major." And I was like, maybe. So I went into my first internship at UVA, and we studied astrochemistry. And that's when I fell in love with chemistry. That's when I realized, oh, this is really cool. This is like really interesting. I loved astrochemistry. I really wish I could have pursued astrochemistry, but they don't make money.
Chloe, you look like you're done asking questions.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you feel like you had more stress applying to grad programs knowing that you're a woman trying to navigate the STEM field?
I did and didn't. So when I was applying, yes, there was stress of like, okay, this college is probably not going to accept me, but this college might. And that's one thing that kept going in my brain. But I also know that when I was accepted to a college program, that's when my stress really heightened because I had to make sure I was on top like everybody else. And like I said, when there's 3 women versus like, I think it was like 11 men in the grad program, you really had to strive and you really had to prove your point and make a name for yourself. Speaking of which, I was one of the ones that went to the Prem Fellowship. So we had in my master's in chemistry, we had a Prem Fellowship where we collaborated with Penn State, and they picked me to go to Penn State versus some of the other male students, and that was a major achievement in my eyes. Yes.
Do you also think that being a woman in STEM, applying to grad schools and like PhDs, do you think it also might have given you a leg up against the other guys you're applying against since they want more women in STEM?
I never really thought about that. I always thought about just grades, the GRE, what they saw on paper. Now that you mentioned that, yeah, it could have been a leg up. Unfortunately, I wish some universities saw that. I did get a lot of rejections, but I did get a lot of acceptance. So going into a chemistry field, a lot of women are afraid, and that's what I've come to realize because it is a really male-dominated field. So a lot of women tend to go to another form of STEM so they can feel more accepted. So going into a chemistry, I didn't feel like I had a leg up. I felt like I had to really step up.
Something I noticed, and you can comment on this too, you brought up how having a daughter impacted how you were hired. And I think and women are seen as the caregivers, the mothers, most of the time. They are seen as chemists or workers in STEM. Do you think that being seen as one thing that's stereotypically feminine stopped you from getting to something that is more stereotypically masculine?
Yes, I really do. That interview that I don't want to mention the company, but I was really excited for that job. I felt like I could have done that job really well. And it was a great internship, and I felt like when this topic of my daughter came up, it destroyed any opportunity of getting that. I noticed that with a couple of internships and a couple of job opportunities that came my way. It's because they feel like your place is at home and your place is not in the lab. I noticed I worked in labs that had women, a lot that were owned by women, and that's where I got a lot of my leg work in and my research, because women help women. And there's men out there who help men. I'm not trying to bag on men, I promise.
Now, you look like you're about to ask a
Oh,
question.
yeah, I wanted to know, you being as one in the STEM field, how did you not let societal pressure deter you from accomplishing your goals?
That's a really good question. Honestly, so you ever hear of you're in co-piloting and you're in a zone? That's what I was in. I was in a zone, and I didn't let any exterior factors come into my life to stop me from what I wanted. I had a goal, and I made sure I met that goal. So what I usually did is anytime I went into a program, I had a goal sheet and my major goal versus my minor goals. And what I did is anytime I felt like I was differing or driving away from my goal, I looked at that sheet and I kept going. Also, having my daughter really drives me to keep going as well. She is my driving force.
Questions? All questions have been asked by the students who are taking the class, but guests, feel free to ask questions too, especially I think that today's message really is about, I think a powerful message about really going towards those dreams and achieving them and getting beyond those pressures, like was said earlier, like pressures to keep you down.
Yeah.
With that in mind, do you have any closing remarks that you might make to everyone to kind of give them that sense of empowerment?
Don't let people tell you you can't do something. Use that when people tell you you can't do something, use that as fuel to prove them wrong. I have been told over and over again, take basket weaving classes. It'll be easier. You can get your degree faster. I took that and I was like, no, I'm going to prove to you. My dad calls me a professional student now because he was like, you've been in school for 8.5 years. You going to be done yet? Because I just kept on feeling like I had to continue. I had to keep proving myself. And when I was done with my last master's in Pharm Sci, I was completely satisfied with myself. I was like, I made a name for myself. I have publications. I've done enough research. Now it's my time to give back. And that's why I love working here, because Barton gives back to their students. And you guys have a really good personal relationship with your professors. A lot of universities don't. They're just a number. But when you come here, you're not just a number. You're an actual person with a face and that you have a talk with and you help guide through. And that's why I love being at Barton.